I need you to look at this. This is what they promised us back in 2021. A 100-mile-long city, mirrored skyscrapers stretching across the desert, 9 million people living with zero cars, zero emissions, robot butlers, flying taxis. They called the whole thing The Line. And honestly, when I first saw those renders, I was like, yeah, this looks insane, but also kind of incredible. Fast forward to this week and, yeah, that dream just crashed into a very expensive wall. The 100-mile city? Now it's being scaled back to about 1.5 miles. The 2029 Asian Winter Games they were supposed to host at their fancy ski resort? Postponed indefinitely. And the craziest part? The site might not even become a city anymore. They're talking about turning it into a giant server farm for AI. So what happened? How did the world's most ambitious megaproject become what some people are now calling the world's most expensive ghost trench? Let's get into it. Alright, so first things first, we gotta talk about money, because at the end of the day, that's really what killed this thing, or at least put it on life support. Saudi Arabia runs on oil money, right? That's not news to anyone. But here's what most people don't realize. There's this thing called the oil break-even price. Basically, it's the price per barrel that Saudi Arabia needs to fund all their crazy ambitious Vision 2030 projects. And that number, it's around $90 a barrel. You want to know what oil is trading at right now in early 2026? About $60. Sometimes a little above, sometimes a little below, but nowhere close to 90. So you do the math. They're running deficits. They've been spending like crazy for years, and the money coming in just isn't matching up anymore. And NEOM specifically? Oh man, the original estimate for the line alone was $500 billion, which is already an insane number. But some reports now suggest the total cost for the entire NEOM development could be approaching $1.5 trillion. Some estimates even go higher. I've seen figures thrown around as high as 4 or even 9 trillion, depending on who you ask. By late 2025, they had already spent around $50 billion. And what do they have to show for it? A really, really expensive trench in the sand, and one luxury island resort that opened 3 years late and 3 times over budget. At some investment forum in Riyadh back in November, one Saudi official literally admitted, and I quote, "We rushed at 100 miles an hour. We are now running deficits. We need to reprioritize." That's not me saying it, that's them admitting it out loud. Okay, but let's say money wasn't an issue. Let's say oil was at $150 a barrel and Saudi Arabia had infinite cash. Would the line even work? I think probably not, at least not in the form they originally pitched. Think about what they were trying to do here. 2 parallel skyscrapers, 500 meters tall, running for 170 kilometers through the desert, covered in mirrors. Now, here's the problem with mirrors in the desert. Everyone assumes, oh, mirrors reflect sunlight so it'll stay cool, right? Wrong. So wrong. Those mirrors don't just bounce light away, they can actually concentrate heat and create what engineers call heat islands. The temperature inside the line would have been absolutely brutal without massive, massive amounts of energy for cooling. We're talking about making an already hot desert environment even more unbearable. And then there's the logistics, getting materials and workers to a site that remote, building infrastructure in terrain that includes mountains and coastline. The utter complexity is off the charts. The Trojena ski resort is a perfect example. This was supposed to be their mountain tourism destination. They were going to host the 2029 Asian Winter Games there. It was going to have outdoor skiing in Saudi Arabia, in a place with no natural snow. And according to people working on the site, the place lacks adequate infrastructure to even bring materials in. It's nowhere close to completion and wasn't going to be ready by 2029, which is probably why this weekend they officially announced the games are postponed indefinitely. The joint statement from the Saudi Olympic Committee and the Olympic Council of Asia tried to spin it as a positive. They said they'll host standalone winter sports events instead to develop athletes and build capabilities. But let's be real, that's PR speak for we can't deliver what we promised. Now, here's something interesting that doesn't get talked about enough. There was a major leadership change at NEOM recently. Back in November 2024, the longtime CEO, Nadhmi al-Nasr, was shown the door, and the story behind it is kind of telling. Remember that luxury island, Sindalah, I mentioned? The one that opened late and over budget? Well, they threw this huge grand opening party in October 2024. Will Smith was there, Alicia Keys performed, the whole celebrity treatment. But apparently, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was not impressed. Despite all the glitz, the project had missed its deadlines by years and blown through its budget. So shortly after that party, the CEO was gone. The new guy, Aiman al-Mudaifer, came in and launched a year-long review of the entire project. That review is supposed to wrap up by the end of the first quarter of this year, and everything we're hearing now suggests the conclusions are pretty dramatic. People briefed on the matter told the Financial Times that MBS now envisions a development that is, quote, far smaller than originally planned. One source said the line will be a totally different concept. It will use the existing infrastructure in a totally different manner. So basically, everything you saw in those slick CGI videos, forget it. That's not happening. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting, and honestly, kind of genius in a weird way. If NEOM isn't going to be a futuristic city for 9 million people, then what is it going to be? The answer, apparently, is data centers, specifically AI data centers. Think about it. What do data centers need more than anything? Two things, really: space and cooling. And guess what? The line has plenty of both. The site is right on the Red Sea coast. That means access to basically unlimited seawater for cooling. Data centers generate insane amounts of heat, and cooling is one of the biggest operational costs. Having seawater right there is a massive advantage. Plus, the location is at the crossroads of 3 continents: Africa, Asia, and Europe. That's strategically valuable for data infrastructure. And Saudi Arabia has been investing heavily in renewable energy, so they could potentially power these facilities with solar and wind. Crown Prince MBS has made it very clear he wants Saudi Arabia to be a global leader in artificial intelligence. They recently launched something called Humane, which is focused on developing AI and data center infrastructure. This isn't just a backup plan. This is becoming the main plan. One source told reporters that the location has natural advantages: digital infrastructure, geographic position, renewable energy, available land, all the things you need for a world-class AI hub. So in a weird twist, the mirrored city of the future might become a city of servers instead of people. Not exactly what they put in the brochures, but maybe more realistic? Now let's zoom out for a second, because NEOM isn't the only megaproject getting reconsidered. The Muqab, for example, that's this massive cube-shaped building planned for central Riyadh as part of the new Murabba development. Work on that has also been paused. They did some preliminary excavation and pilings, but construction beyond that stage is frozen. The future of the Muqab itself is uncertain, although development of the surrounding district is supposed to continue. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia still has some very hard deadlines coming up. They're hosting Expo 2030 in Riyadh, and more importantly, they're hosting the 2034 FIFA World Cup. Both of those events require massive infrastructure investment, and they can't be postponed or scaled back the way NEOM can. So you can see what's happening here, right? They're reprioritizing. The World Cup is happening no matter what. Expo is happening. Those are locked in. But the more speculative stuff, like a 100-mile mirrored city in the desert, that can wait, or change, or maybe never happen at all. The Public Investment Fund, which owns NEOM and is valued at nearly $1 trillion, is under increasing pressure to show returns. They can't just keep pouring money into projects that don't deliver. At some point, investors and stakeholders want to see something tangible. I do want to mention something that often gets left out of these conversations about mega projects and budgets and engineering challenges. There's a human cost to all of this. NEOM has faced criticism for years over how land was acquired for the project. The Saudi government has been accused of forcibly displacing members of the Hawaitat tribe from the Tabuk province. There have been reports of arrests and detentions. In 2020, an activist was reportedly shot and killed after protesting his eviction. These are real people whose lives were disrupted for a project that now might not even happen in the form it was promised. And that's worth thinking about when we talk about scaling back and pivoting and all these corporate buzzwords. So here's the big question. Is this a failure, or is this just what smart adaptation looks like? I've been going back and forth on this, honestly. On one hand, you could argue that announcing something as ambitious as the line and then quietly scaling it back to 1% of its original size is a pretty spectacular failure. Billions spent, deadlines missed, promises broken. But on the other hand, maybe this is exactly what should happen. Maybe the original plan was always unrealistic, and the responsible thing to do is admit that and pivot to something achievable. Data centers aren't as sexy as robot butlers and flying taxis, but they're real, they're profitable, they might actually get built. One source told reporters that the changes illustrate a growing willingness within the Saudi system to adapt plans to economic realities, rather than persist with projects that are no longer viable at their original scale. MBS himself has said in the past that projects would be canceled or radically altered if required by the public interest, so in theory, this is him following through on that. Look, at the end of the day, here's what I think. The era of unchecked megaprojects in the desert is over, at least for now. The combination of lower oil prices, tighter budgets, and the reality of actually trying to build these things has forced a recalculation. The line, as it was originally imagined, is probably not happening, not in our lifetime anyway. What we might get is a much smaller development that uses the existing infrastructure in ways we haven't seen yet. Maybe some of it becomes AI data centers. Maybe some of it becomes something else entirely. Is that disappointing? Kind of, yeah. Those original renders were genuinely exciting, even if they seemed impossible. But maybe impossible was always the right word. The question now is whether Saudi Arabia can successfully pivot. Can they turn what was supposed to be the city of the future into something equally valuable, just different? Can they meet their World Cup deadlines and Expo commitments while also building out AI infrastructure? We'll find out. The review is supposed to conclude in the next few weeks, and whatever comes next, I'll be here to break it down. All right, that's what I got for today. I'm curious what you all think. I will be doing more of these kind of deep dives in the future, and if you found this helpful, smash that subscribe button. Catch you in the next one.